So in 2018, at the National League Convention in Chicago, co-president Ann Havlick and I had the privilege of watching Chris in action. Don't let her petite size fool you for a minute. She can command a room with a glance or a word. The title of Chris's address today is so fitting, The League's Legacy of Activism. Chris certainly knows a thing or two about activism. She served as president, chair of the League of Women Voters of the United States and the League of Women Voters Education Fund from 2016 to 2020. Prior to that, she served on the National League's board as advocacy chair and chaired the League of Women Voters Redistricting Task Force. Then in 2005, Chris joined the board of directors of the League of Women Voters of California and took the helm of voter education and advocacy relating to state and local government. Chris was a key player in the adoption of California's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission and its initial redistricting effort in 2011. She is currently redistricting director of the California League. Recently, and on a number of occasions, our league has had the benefit of her wisdom and experience as we positioned ourselves to oppose the county's new map of supervisor districts and contest the proposed county charter. We are indebted to her for her mentorship and counsel. Chris?
I'm following in the footsteps of some very distinguished people who stood on boxes. You know, Senator Barbara Boxer always carried a step stool with her, and Assembly member and later LA Supervisor Sheila Kuehl. I mean, she just traveled with a box because they were shorter than I was, and that's saying something. Okay, well, it's so nice to be with you here in person. Happy birthday, your 60th. Congratulations on being named an intervener in this historic lawsuit, and congratulations. You are now the largest league in California. Give yourself a hand. As I said, it is really great to be here in person with a group of leaguers talking about cool policy stuff. How we've all missed this. I swear by Zoom, an incredible aid to league work, but you know, it's just not the same as gathering together in groups with food and drink to talk about it all. But before I begin, I'd like to give you a brief update on where we are nationally. Over the last biennium, we've protected 35.8 million voters dealing with voter suppression. We've sent 240,000 letters to Congress, supported 19,000 pro-democracy activities. We've had digital engagements of 1.5 million. Training for league leaders, 205. That's not counting everything the state and local leagues do. People trained directly by the league, probably for a lot to do with redistricting, 10,000. Training for league leaders, 10K. People trained, just folks trained. Partners recruited across the country, 2,700. And people engaged through our people-powered Fair Map campaign, which is our redistricting campaign at every level in every state in the union, 1.4 million. And the league has given, and the National League in the past 2 years has given $1 million pass-through grants to state and local leagues, and California has been a recipient of some of them. And overall, we've seen a membership growth of 7% in the last biennium. So let's talk about slow, as I heard everybody say. I first got to know San Luis Obispo when I was on the state board with Trudy Jarrett. At board dinners over wine she carefully selected for us, she told us about the water issues Arroyo Grande had with Pismo Beach. We were all fascinated. Coming from an area, Los Angeles, where every drop of water is adjudicated and monitored with the vigilance given to national security, we were absolutely enthralled. Chutzpah with which Pismo Beach seemed to operate with new development and water was something we were quite interested in. And when a similar situation arose in LA County, a couple of years later, we built on what she had told us to do some really effective lobbying. I visited here a few times in the mid 2000s when the governor and legislature were calling special elections virtual every single year with various propositions. You did your SLO democracy talks on public TV. And I came up here to talk about the initiative and referendum process in California, what it was like then, what the problems were, what could be done about it. Had a really good time. And of course, redistricting. The League was campaigning for substantive redistricting initiatives reform, and I spoke at a member community meeting here. Doing regional training over the course of the years, I've met and worked with a number of your members. One story I will always treasure involves our nonpartisan policy and the vexed issue of lawn signs. Can the president have somebody who lives with them or the voter service chair put a lawn sign out for a candidate? Your then president shared that her mother lived with her. And she couldn't speak for anyone else, but she had better sense than to tell her mother she couldn't put out a lawn sign if she wanted to. I use that and continue to use it of how the question needs to be handled, whether it's your partner, your mother, your teenaged son, whoever. You know, if they want to put out a lawn sign, think of the fact that you really can't tell them what to do. For 60 years now, you have been a vital part of your community. Your voter service has been stellar, as we've known for a long time. I remember how you held a candidate forum for supervisor years ago and used Skype to bring in a candidate who was in Afghanistan. Years later, with the onset of the pandemic and local leagues wringing their hands about how one could possibly do a remote forum, I told them that of course they could. San Luis Obispo had done it years ago with a more primitive technology and a time zone challenge from hell. Just don't tell me it can't be done. Your citizen education work is known throughout the state. You know, I'm going to step down because I'm up here and this is down here. And it's really hard to follow. Just going to have to cope with it. Thank you. Okay. As I said, your citizen education work is known throughout the state. And your work on civil discourse preceded most of our efforts in this area. You served as a mentor to a number of local leagues in California. Your work on money and politics garnered lots of publicity, and now you've launched yourself right into the middle of the hot policy topic of the decade, redistricting. I'll just recap for a moment what you have done in the past couple of years, because it's the perfect example of how the league works at its best. As the redistricting issue loomed, this league decided to focus on the local community, the county, because all the attention and fireworks and excitement was at the state level. As you educated yourselves and the community and started to monitor the local process, quintessentially league, you found that the process was most definitely not being followed. And you began to inform yourselves and the community about the problem. Some people were already paying attention, but the redistricting is not basically the most intentionally gripping subject in the world, so lots were not. The league's name drew attention to the problem in a way no other organization could. Interest and concern began to build. People joined you to work on it. As time progressed and the situation grew worse, you continued to step up and call out bad process. You were joined by partners. Many voices continued to speak. And finally, when the last blatant step was taken, you joined with the greater community to combat the situation. And people continue to join you. So look at it from the league perspective. We say education leads to advocacy. You educated yourselves and the community on a topic which is very important, but complicated and not necessarily gripping on the surface. As things progressed, people joined you because, as we know, the league is nonpartisan. They could work in an atmosphere that's non-toxic. You don't have to agree with each other about every policy issue. And they don't have to talk about party affiliation. They can just work productively on this issue and benefit their community. Let's face it. It's a huge relief to be able to work on a problem without having to listen to diatribes and personal attacks. And if someone does slip, well then, the league is nonpartisan, and please step outside if you would like to continue in this vein. This happened across the country. As the national and state leagues threw themselves into the big stuff, state maps, local leagues began to apply that knowledge at the local level. Instinctively, they realized that while they might have some minimum impact at the state level, they could have a much bigger impact in their community. So they educated themselves and their communities, engaged residents in the redistricting process, and brought disparate groups together toward a fair and transparent redistricting process in their area. And they've grown, reaching out to engage residents, forge new partnerships, and strengthen existing ones. They've built an educated and irate base of people who can see how engagement at the local level can have tremendous benefits. Whether it's Savannah County, Georgia, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Juneau, Alaska, Wilmar, Minnesota, the trajectory is the same. Local leagues bring their thoughtful, calm, non-focus to the ballot, and because it is a ballot, and playing a central role in engaging the community. And did they win? Yes, because no matter the outcome of the maps, the community's consciousness of the systemic problem was made concrete in a way it has never been before. And, can I say it, a grim determination to change the game set in. So what's next? Here in San Luis Obispo, it's a question of establishing a truly independent redistricting commission. There are several paths to that goal, and you are actively exploring all of them. It's not going to happen overnight, and the league will need to keep actively educating and advocating, strengthening existing partnerships and building new ones. When you do achieve an independent IRC, that's jargon, your work has just begun. You'll have to do outreach to build a diverse applicant pool, work with partners to monitor the process, educate and engage residents to participate. That takes plenty of work. You'll need to work on the census and tie participation in the census to participating in redistricting. I'll share with you that this language was a very powerful tool in 2022. We all discovered quite by accident that the powerful networks created by census outreach laid the basis for redistricting networks. We need to build on that linkage for 2030-2032. In fact, as state presidents have gathered on monthly National League redistricting calls, we keep hearing them say, well, you know, we've already sat down and started to prepare for next time. We know what we're going to be doing for the next 10 years. While you may not be spending every waking league moment on redistricting from now on, you will be challenged, you only think you will be challenged to build on what you've created with local redistricting. Offering a safe haven for people to come together and work cooperatively on community issues is your key. What are the issues that resonate with you and the community? How can you tackle them in a non-toxic, nonpartisan way? You will encounter opposition, which will seek to frame you as partisan. That is a given for any league that engages. But as you work, you know that you'll be building on a proud and solid history, which gives you guidance and encouragement as you keep moving forward. Thank you. Questions?
Any questions for Chris? Come on, I know you have questions for Chris.
While you're thinking of a question, I'll tell you one bit of news. The League of Women Voters of California is partnering with Common Cause and Asian Americans Advancing Justice and the ACLU to fund a completely independent survey of how local redistricting worked this time in California. Our part of the survey was funded by the National League. The research is going on right now. We're using the work that the local leagues did. We are surveying representatives of underserved communities across the state. The report will come out toward the end of the year, the good, the bad, the ugly. What went right, what went wrong. It will be used as the basis for the League of Women Voters and our partners' advocacy for the next however many years to make the Fair Maps Act even better, to correct distances, and I'll say it now, to advocate for mandatory, truly independent redistricting commissions in every entity over a certain population size. And you bet that the population floor will be quite below San Luis Obispo County.
To your knowledge, is there a county or a local that we could use as a model IRC?
Sure. The closest thing to it would be Los Angeles County and San Diego County. That was done by state law. They were not happy, but they lived with it. There is a basic model which now exists in state law, which you could use to what you must do and how you can tweak it to fit your county. While the model is the same, Los Angeles County and San Diego County implemented certain things in different ways, but the model is there to look at. And it's a good model. So far, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but the two counties which had a really bad history of incumbent protection, the independent commissions did a pretty good job.
Was it grassroots based or was it governmental based?
No, it was based, the model is based on the state process, which is you recruit pools and then they are selected they are selected by entity independent from the elected officials. They don't have anything to do with it. It's like the state. Yeah.
Chris, I know that California's Independent Redistricting Commission is very workable. Are other states using California as a model? Question one. And question two, are you hearing any flack against the top two primary?
Well, depending on who you talk to, California is either the gold standard or just don't even get near me with that. Yes, it is a model in a sense that we can say very clearly California is the truly independent redistricting commission, separate from influence. And, it's just a few other states have independent commissions. They haven't worked quite as well. Arizona's the last couple of times hasn't worked well. Michigan got one and then the legislature tried to abolish it. but they're trying very hard. Colorado had an independent redistricting commission for the state legislature. This time they added one for the congressional district. So that people are building on it, but it depends on do you have an initiative process? If you don't, good luck to you. And even if you have an initiative process, what kind of initiative process is it? Because some states have initiative processes which the legislature can just ignore if it feels like it. My classic example is South Dakota, which years ago, the voters of South Dakota passed a very basic ethics law initiative for the legislature, passed by 97% of the vote. The legislature just said, no, we don't care. We're not doing it. That's it. So I'm not sure what kind of an initiative process that is. On the top two primary, no, I don't know. I think, there's a lot of speculation. Why don't we just go to instant runoff voting? But no, they're just sort of, and why can't, the top two, why can't whoever gets 50% of the vote, no matter what, win and save us the money from it, but up in the air.
Any other questions?
It's not really a question. I understood that Santa Barbara had an independent redistricting committee.
It does. And despite, they ran into, I don't know how many problems. I mean, challenges, people quit because there was just so many, but at the end of the day, what we're hearing from, we interviewed some of the groups who work, not just the League, but CAUSE and some of the other groups who worked in Santa Barbara County. And at the end of the day, democracy is really messy, but it worked a heck of a lot better than if the incumbents were protecting themselves. And not, the state process was perfect. Okay, it was messy. There was a lot of tearing of hair and, thing. But at the end of the day, it worked. Absolutely nobody sued for anything. And hey, we've got a good set of maps.
I think I'm next. First of all, Chris, thank you very, very much for being here today. It's a real pleasure. I wanted to just ask you, one of your last comments was talking about League involvement locally and engaging the community and those that we might not have everything in common with. And you talked about facing opposition. And I'm wondering if you could just comment on coping mechanisms for that scenario.
I don't want to, this is going to sound snarky. But, you develop a thick skin. You think about when the women started out trying to get the right to vote, they were laughed at for 70 years and they were disparaged and insulted and attacked verbally and sometimes physically. And they kept on. When we were campaigning for Proposition 11, which was the state reform, we were attacked by all kinds of people. We were called partisan. And you just have to, a friend of mine said, people don't shoot at burnt out light bulbs. We count. We do. We count. The League is a name and a nonpartisan force that matters. And so what do? When we work with both parties, always have worked with both parties in the legislature at both the state and the national level. How do you get bills passed? You don't just sit there and hope. You work with legislators as across the broadest spectrum as you can hope to get together to work to lobby to get the bill passed. I've always said, we don't hate parties, we just don't support or oppose them. And so traditionally, if a particular party likes what the League is doing, they're pushing their bill or they're opposing a bill they don't like, well, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. If we are opposed to what we're doing, well, then you're partisan. It's sort of like, you're, no, you cannot go to that street race to your teenager. You're just the meanest mother in the world. If we don't do what people like, we're partisan. When we do what they like, we're great. I just learn to take the criticism. And I found, I get angry sometimes when people, say you're nonpartisan. But on the other hand, if it's because we're being called partisan because we're doing something that I think is really terrific, it doesn't bother me much.
You mentioned, I'm over here.
Okay.
You mentioned our membership. What are you seeing about membership trends in California and nationwide for the league?
Well, nationwide, it's up 7%. So that's really great. And we have to remember that you're up. You've done a really great job. There are some leagues that were up, some here in California, there are some leagues that held steady, some leagues that dropped. And we're doing a survey. I mean, the lady who's running the whole survey and harassing us is sitting here at the table with me, Jackie Canfield. Okay, so what happened? So, we asked you, okay, what'd you do? I asked Santa Barbara is one of my local leagues. I said, you guys held steady. What did you do? And they told me, and I talked to some leagues that lost, and they said, well, this is why we think. COVID, not killing people, but keeping people apart. If I want to attract membership, how do I do that? And then even more importantly, if somebody sees what we've done and is excited and joins, how do I reach out and engage them in the middle of lockdown? And so you try and think of virtual events, which is why everybody went to every kind of Zoom meeting and webinar and YouTube presentation they could possibly think of. But at a certain point, you got to touch people. You got to make it real for them that belonging to this league or any league means something in a very personal way. And when everybody was scrambling to literally stay alive and keep things together, I think people forgot about that. And that was part of the problem.
Any more questions?
Hearing no more questions.
Nothing from the Zoomers?
Don't leave yet, Chris,
Nothing
because
nothing on chat?
no chat
Well,
questions. Thank you
okay.
for asking. So before we let you leave the podium, I would like to call up Clint Wyrick. He is the district representative for State Senator John Laird, and he has a special presentation for you, Chris.
And don't worry, my mom's the same height as you, so I've used this. But yeah, actually, and for Senator Laird, he appreciates all the work that you've done for the League of Women Voters, the United States as its president during the centennial year and during pandemic times, which is always weird. But also, when he was in the assembly before, he remembers you when you were California government director as well. And he appreciated all the work that you've done there too, and all the work that you continue to do. So he did want to give you and stuff, obviously can't be here, but as far as Senate recognition from the state Senate for all of the great work you've done.
Thank you. And Chris told that Senator Laird will be hearing from us about redistricting.
Yep.